Hi, and welcome to another episode of She's the Boss. Today, I'm joined by the CEO of GenderBuzz, Natasha Stromberg. Natasha, thank you so much for joining me this evening.
You're welcome. Nice to be here. Thank you for asking me.
GenderBuzz, I love the name. Tell us about the business and how you came up with the name for it.
Well, the business is an online business directory for female-led or female-owned businesses. And I got the idea for the name because I was in the sort of equality space, consulting and looking at gender equality. And there was lots of conversation going on, and I just really liked the name. I thought, what's all the buzz about gender equality? You know, it's all about talking about the solutions to an age-old problem, really. And when I found the name was available, I couldn't believe it. I thought, great, that's the name for me. And I think it's quite flexible in that it can involve men and women, but it has evolved to be a business really about gender equality and females leading in the business world, because that's what I'm really passionate about. So we now have 60 businesses listed with us, and the aim is to grow that.
Mm-hmm. Why that business specifically? What was the initial, what drew you in that direction and made you decide I'm going to start a business as opposed to, working within an organization as an advocate for women?
Well, I've always been an advocate for women ever since I was a child, really. I kind of trace it back to when I was 9 years old, when everybody else was being Carnival Queen, but I was actually dressing up as the Prime Minister and sat on a float, age 9, as the then Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher. So I'm showing my age a little bit. But I was always interested in women being what they could be and their potential. And that's followed me throughout my career. I've had a pretty successful career in finance in the city. I've worked for some of the top companies and the big banks, and also the financial regulator. But I could see throughout my career that there was still a lot to be done in gender equality, and that women weren't really breaking through. And I wanted to really look at some of the reasons why that was, and to see if I could, help change that. So I decided that that's what I wanted to do. Call it a calling, call it doing something with more purpose, whatever. But I think that's what brought me to it, was my experience within the corporate world.
And did you personally suffer from a form of gender discrimination along the journey?
Well, I've been asked about that before, actually, an interview that I gave. And I think it's very difficult to say I have been on the receiving end of gender discrimination, because none of us really know. I think gender bias, for sure, because I think what we've seen is that when women behave in a certain way, it's viewed as negative, whereas if men behave in a certain way, it's viewed as positive in the business world. So, if we're talking about being quite forceful, confident, I know I've certainly been called too confident when I've probably just been I've just been doing a really solid job. Yeah. So I think gender bias, for sure. Gender discrimination, again, if we look at the pay gap and the pay gap figures, I think it would be hard for me to sit here and say that I haven't been the subject of gender discrimination in that respect, because I think probably all women have, and I think that's what the figures are showing. So I don't think it's a question of me being a victim of that. I think it's the way that society is set up, and hence the corporate world is set up. So, I think it's bigger than just me or one person being treated in a certain way.
I read a piece of research recently that suggested that the gender pay gap isn't always a consequence of men not paying women enough, but it's actually sometimes that women aren't as confident as men in applying for jobs that may be kind of above their current pay, well above their current pay scale, and not necessarily taking huge leaps in asking for more than what they're being offered. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I've always asked for what I think I'm worth. I've never really had a problem with that. But I think the gender pay gap is multifaceted, and I don't think there is one simple reason for it. There are a myriad of reasons. And I do think that the data that's coming out from the gender pay gap reporting will actually help companies address some of that with their employees, be that return to work, be that the kind of choices they're making in recruiting bias, helping women, ask for more, breaking down bias in interviews. There's a lot of stuff wrapped up in that. And some of it is to do with deep, entrenched, ingrained beliefs that all of us have actually, and have had for centuries, and breaking that down is a challenge. So I don't think it's just women don't ask for money, or men don't give it to them, or women have children and men don't. I think it's a myriad of reasons that add up to that very significant pay gap. And we're kind of undoing decades of the world of work now. But the data's useful, I do believe that. And I think it's the start of really unwinding some of these things.
Mm-hmm. You touched briefly on, I guess, you showing your leadership qualities as a child. Did you always know that at some point you would start a business, or was it literally you went through your career and then thought, actually, I want to give back? Is that something that you think was inherent in you, or it developed throughout your career?
No, I think it did develop throughout my career. I probably always envisioned myself in the corporate world. I mean, someone did ask me when I was very young what I wanted to do when I grew up, and I said I want to be an international businesswoman. And I was only in junior school then, and I was very clear about that. But when I started my corporate career, I always imagined I would stay within that. And it's only later on when, I think, like you say, I had a feeling that I wanted to give back more, that my talents could be used for something else, and that I wanted to start my own business based on that.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of the impact that you've made so far, what are you most proud of?
Gosh, I'm proud that I've actually talked about it and actually set up a business that helps women, rather than just talking about it and saying, oh, we must do something. I'm proud that I said I must do something, and I did it. Mm-hmm. I've had lots of great experiences along the way. I've been on BBC Radio talking about gender equality with some really funny call-ins. I've been a judge for the Women in Defence 2 years running, which is great, which is women in the armed forces and honouring the top women in the armed forces. That's a fantastic experience. But, I really do enjoy talking to the members in my community and just finding out what they're doing every day and the struggles that they have. I think I'm most proud of that, actually, that people have actually signed up to the directory and believe that I will help them to achieve the success that they want. So I think it's probably that.
It sounds like you're definitely making an impact, for sure. When you, I guess, chose to take the route and start the business, who would you say was your greatest support?
My husband, for sure, and my parents. They did believe in me, and that I could do it. I think many of my peers were quite shocked that I would leave a successful corporate career and strike out on my own into something quite different. I think they were surprised, and it's always nerve-wracking when you walk away from that. But my husband knew I could do it, and he said to me, if you don't do it, who will. You're in a great position to do it. You've got years of experience. You know, you owe it to yourself and others to do it. So I think without him, I wouldn't have carried on as long. You know, it's very up and down being an entrepreneur, but he's always believed in my vision, and you know, that's been great.
Did you have people around you who said, no, don't do it, you're in a great job, just stick with that?
Not people who said like explicitly, no, don't do it. But a lot of people say things like, oh, you're brave doing that. And now I don't know what that actually means. You're brave or / stupid. Or you're brave, I wish I could do that. I'm not sure. I didn't have anyone say, definitely don't do it. But I think, again, people were probably thinking, why are you doing that? You know, but I think if something is to some extent your calling, and I was watching a video with Oprah today, actually, who I've always followed, and she says, you know, it's your job to find out what your calling is on this planet. And until you find that, do a job. And I think she's right. We need jobs to survive and to pay the bills, etc. And once you're in a position to actually find your calling, or you do find your calling and you're in a position to pursue that, then I think it's the right time. And I don't think anyone probably could have stopped me.
Yeah. What were you most afraid of?
I think I was afraid that no one would really take any notice of what I was saying or think that it was particularly important. And to be honest, at the beginning, nobody really did. I mean, I started on this journey 4 years ago, before Me Too, before Time's Up. And I think people thought it was a bit of a fringe subject, you know, gender equality. And I started a website, being a coach and sort of pursuing that. And it wasn't really very successful. I found it difficult to get clients, difficult to differentiate myself. So I think it was really the thought that I would just be sort of shouting out my opinions into an echo chamber, or just sort of hello. And to some extent that was true, but I learned from that. And I think ultimately it was a burning desire, and still is a burning desire within me. So I just had to keep adjusting to that. And I think when we talk about fear, and I always used to say this to young women I mentored when I was in the corporate world, you only gain confidence by doing something. Once you've done it, you're kind of, you know, you can do it, so you gain confidence. And it was like that with me, really. I did my first website. It was quite nice looking, but it didn't really do anything. I then moved on to a second website. It was much better, but again, it didn't really do anything, until I really hit on the sort of the success with the Gender Buzz directory. Then it really started to move forward. So I think my greatest fear that no one would really care what I had to say, I guess.
How did you get people to care? What was the step change between you not necessarily getting many clients and shouting to an empty room to now you have 60 people on the directory and people clearly are interested in what you have to say? Where did that step change, or what was that step change?
I think it's persistence. It really is. It is dogged persistence and consistency. I think a lot of successful entrepreneurs would say this. You can't show up on day one and say, here I am, you follow me, I'm great, I'm going to change your life. People want to see that you've done the work. You know, they want to see that, you know, you have to prove yourself again and again and again to gain people's trust. And gaining people's trust doesn't happen, you know, in a short space of time. It happens over a long period of time. And I think, you know, I've been on the gender equality scene now for 4 years. I am an expert. I've done a lot of interviews. You know, I put my voice out there. I'm not afraid to share my opinions, and people think, yeah, you know, she's the real deal. She's worked hard. She's produced a lot of work, a lot of content. And I think that counts. It really is about consistency and persistence, dogged persistence.
And speaking of that, were there any times in, I guess, the first 2 years where you felt actually nobody's listening? I don't know if I can do this. And how did you overcome that if you did?
Yeah, I did. I thought that often, you know, when I didn't really make any money, I thought, you know, is this for me? Am I barking up the wrong tree? You know, I'd say to my husband, am I doing this right? And, you know, actually I did go back to the corporate world for a short, you know, medium-term contract to help get money back in the business, which was it turned out to be a great thing, actually. It motivated me even more, and provided me with a lot more clarity on my business. And all the time I was sort of building contacts, etc. So there were many times that I thought, you know what, I'm giving up. But I think at the core of who I am is this desire to, you know, leave this planet having empowered women in a big way. And I do want to make an impact. So it's ultimately not much of an option for me to give up to myself. So, you know, we all go through periods. I'm sure all the entrepreneurs that I speak to do think, oh no, this is too hard. But I do love it. And I think really comes down to the core of who I am, and you can't change that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there's a few things that you said that resonate directly with me. In terms of kind of the high points, and this is a question I ask fairly frequently because I think a lot of the time we can focus on what's so hard about being an entrepreneur, but what has been the highest points in your journey so far?
I think being asked to be a judge for Women in Defence was a high point because, you know, the British Armed Forces have thousands of extremely talented and accomplished women working within them. And for the organiser of that particular event and that scheme to look at me as an expert and ask me to be a judge of the Gender Equality Awards and the diversity piece of those awards shows to me that I'm considered enough of an expert to have an opinion on that. And, you know, it made me very proud going to these events, going to the Ministry of Defence, that kind of thing. I think, you know, yes, this is really excellent. And also when I have, you know, I look at it, I publish a blog from one of my members and it gets 1,000 views. I'm pretty happy with that. I think that's quite an achievement. You know, I never thought I've got 1,200 followers on Twitter now. Some people would think that's nothing. I think that's fantastic, actually. So I think, you know, there are big high points and then there are the sort of incremental high points. Mm-hmm. And also when people say to me, you know, oh, you've made such a difference. Thank you. You're so supportive. I mean, that is a high point as well. And I'm actually undergoing a rebrand at the moment. And I think when the new website is finished, it will be a high point as well, because it's kind of the culmination of a lot of creativity, which is highly satisfying.
Mm-hmm. I was having a conversation recently, another She's the Boss interview with the lady, Hira Ali, and we were talking about imposter.
Oh, I know, she's listed on our directory.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Really, really interesting individual. And we had an extended conversation about imposter syndrome. Now, you said before when you were talking about kind of your high point that there's so many women in the defences that could have been asked, but you asked. Have you ever felt in kind of this journey of you becoming an expert and being known as an expert, have you ever felt that kind of feeling of imposter syndrome?
I have to say, no. I've always believed in myself really strongly, mainly because I do a lot of research around the subject. So I do a lot of reading. I do the hard stuff to make sure that I know my stuff, if you see what I mean. I've never really felt like that. I've always felt that I'm as good as the next person if I've done the work. So what I do to make sure I don't have imposter syndrome is I just do the work. Mm-hmm. And then I don't worry about it. You know, I do read, lean in, twice, 3 times. I do read other books, twice or 3 times. I prepare. And so I don't, once I'm sort of on stage or I'm in an interview, I feel prepared. Plus, I have had a corporate career of 25 years, so I've got a sort of back catalogue of knowledge, and I've been in lots of different situations. So that's never really affected me, actually, the imposter syndrome.
So for someone, I guess that's at the beginning of their career, your recommendation would be to make sure you know your stuff to help to quell those feelings of, am I really supposed to be here?
Yeah, I think there's nothing worse than someone saying they're an expert and then actually they're not. I think it's a really good idea to do the hard yards, whether it be doing an MBA or doing a qualification. Before I started mentoring officially through my business, I did do a coaching qualification. I did a diploma in coaching. I thought, what, if I'm going to be coaching others, I should have that knowledge base myself. And it was, it was hard. It took me a year, distance learning, but I did it. And I thought, yeah, I now know that. I've read all the coaching books. I understand that. I would say do the work, and you won't feel as though you have imposter syndrome, because you'll think, yeah, I deserve to be here. I've done the work. Mm-hmm. So I would say don't do shortcuts. It's you see a lot of people saying, oh, I'm an expert. I've done this. I've got 10,000 audience members, etc. Just be patient and do it slowly, but do it right.
Do you think that, well, not do you think that, in terms of your upbringing, were you always confident? Is that something that your parents or something about your upbringing created within you, or is it something that's natural to you, do you think?
I think my upbringing had a lot to do with it. I mean, I have an older brother, and my parents were both educators, and they brought us up in a gender equal way. My dad is a feminist. He never made a differentiation between my brother and I. I was always told that I could achieve anything I wanted to. I was always loved unconditionally by my parents. I grew up in a village in Derbyshire. I went to a comprehensive school. I had a fairly normal life, but it was a happy life. And I think I've always been pretty happy about myself and confident. And I think I have to owe that to the upbringing I had.
Mm. Is there anything that across your career, not just since you've started your own business, but even prior to that, that you look back and think, I wish I had done this differently, and had I done that differently, I would be in a different place now?
Gosh, for 25 years, that probably lots of times I've thought that. In terms of my banking career, I've often thought that because I worked in banking and then I worked in regulation. I think if I had my time again, I'd probably, when I graduated, I would work in regulation and then in banking. Because again, I think it would have given me a much better foundation. I kind of did the learning in reverse. I still wanted to do the work, but I did it much later in my career. So probably that would be the only thing that I would change, just to get that solid base at the beginning of my career. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there are lots of other decisions that I've thought, oh, I should have done this, should have done that. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the direction that I took in everything, because I learned so much, you know.
Mm-hmm. You can't want for more than that.
No, exactly.
In terms of switching off,
yeah,
I know that especially for a lot of women, female entrepreneurs, you kind of always juggling many different things. Mm. How do you find time to switch off, or are you able to switch off?
I think initially when I started my own business, I wasn't able to switch off, because it is quite all consuming, because the business is you and things are whirring around your head and you think, oh, I should have done this, what have I got to do? And obviously I have an office within my house, probably like many people. All I have to do is step into my office and quickly check my emails, but I don't do that anymore. I close the door. I start pretty early in the morning. When my husband leaves for work, I start work myself, and I give myself sort of limits and big chunks of time to have a break. And if I'm on holiday, I don't read my emails, very, very rarely. Or, bank holiday weekend, I had a quick check on something because I had a busy day today. But generally, I want to spend my time off with my husband and my pets and, do my gardening or whatever. So I don't find it that difficult to switch off anymore. I did at the beginning. I used to.
How did you learn to switch off and let go? I know for me, when I was running my business previously, one of the challenges was getting to that point of being able to turn off my phone. And what got me there was having illness and actually not being able to physically do anything for a period, and realizing actually the world's not going to end if I don't check my emails for a couple of days. And that was the key moment for me. Did you have a key moment, or was it just something that kind of gradually happened?
I think it was gradual, in that I know I want to do this for the rest of my life, and hopefully I will have a pretty long life. And so I realized I have time, and I thought to myself, I also watched a lot of videos. Follow an entrepreneur called Marie Forleo. I think she's excellent. She's American. And I took a lot of tips from her about switching off, how to remain mentally healthy. My coaching course really helped me as well, because when you train to be a coach, you have a lot of coaching yourself, and you really look into yourself, who you are as a person. And I think some of the techniques they taught us about switching off are really good, and just being patient and knowing that I have time, and knowing that life is beautiful in all its beauty, and that life is not just about work, and honouring that other person in your life, or other people, if you've got a family, that you honour your time with them. It, in some ways, quite disrespectful to have someone come home from their job and you be working. I mean, obviously there are exceptions like this evening, but which is fine. But I think honouring and respecting the other relationships you have in your life is key.
I think that's so important. In each interview, there's kind of key moments of Oprah calls them aha moments, as I'm sure you know. But for me, I've never thought of it like that. And actually, it's very true. And there's a lot of people, both women and men, I know that who run their own businesses and work way into the evening and have partners, have children. And I guess the way you've just phrased it make you stop and think actually it is quite disrespectful.
Yeah, I think so. I think if you imagine the other way around, I think anything in life, you get out what you put in, and relationships are the same as, work, and you do get out what you put in. And I think you owe it to yourself and your partner to put in your best effort. And I mean, I also find that I'm at my most creative in the morning. So I do work quite early, and I will finish, around 3, because I find that creatively I'm too tired after that to make sensible, clear decisions. And one of the big things about the corporate world that I didn't like is this forced sort of 8 to 6 mentality, where I'd done most of my work by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the rest of the time was dead time, because my brain is very productive, and most people's brains are very productive in the morning, and only productive for about 5 hours a day. And I think understanding that and knowing that, I stop wasting my time sitting at my desk, and I just go and do something else, because I know tomorrow morning, I'll probably do in an hour what I could have done in 4 hours this afternoon. So I think it's really understanding what productivity is rather than hours at your desk.
And it's funny that, you're hearing more talk of flexible working and remote working and that kind of thing, but there still does seem to be some resistance of that idea that actually there's no point chaining somebody to a desk for set hours if they're not being productive for those hours. I'm interested to see how long it's going to take for, I guess, it's catch on everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel it's changed that much in all the years I've been in the corporate environment. You do hear a lot of noises about it, but I don't actually think in reality it's true. I think employers often feel that they're paying for someone's time, maybe not their talent or their productivity, and that time served is in the office is a big badge of honour. And really, companies, if they want to be more productive, need to look at that. And Britain is not a very productive country if you look at on the scale of our peers, and we need to look at that. And a lot of that is to do with extreme exhaustion, mental exhaustion. You can't be productive, you can't force your brain to be productive when it's really exhausted.
Interesting. So what are the plans for you? Where do you see yourself and Gender Buzz in the next 10 years?
Well, first of all, we've got the launch of the new site in a month, and I think that will be the key to expanding. I would love to see Gender Buzz in every country, on women's smartphones across the world, so that they can access female-led businesses when they, anytime they want to. So if you are sitting, I don't know, on an island or somewhere in the South Pacific, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but if you have a dream of running a business and you have a smartphone and you think, okay, well, I need to find an accountant, I need to find a social media promoter, I need to find all the things that you need to start a business, a photographer, Gender Buzz will be the place for you to find female-led businesses who can help you, and talent. And I want it to be a place where female talent resides online. So there can no longer be any excuses for people to say, oh, I just can't find a woman who does this, or there are no women who do that. There are no women this. I want to be able to say, yes, there are. We have the biggest database of female talent globally. That's what I would like.
I'm sure that you will achieve it. It sounds like a very exciting vision. 3 pieces of advice you would give to somebody, a woman thinking of starting her own business, maybe has a long career in the corporate sector and is nervous about taking that leap. What would you tell her?
I thought about this actually, and for me, having a sense of purpose about your business is the number one thing. I think if you go into a business either seeing someone else succeeded and think, yes, I want to earn X, or I want to buy Y house, I don't think you'll be able to stick at it as an entrepreneur. I think it has to come from the real core of who you are. And that could be anything. It could be, you could be going into the beauty industry and thinking, right, I want to go into the beauty industry to create the perfect X, skincare, because I don't know, I had burns when I was younger and I want some makeup to cover that up. These kind of things that have happened to you, or that give you a sense of purpose, that drive you on to know that you're going to make a change with your product or service. I think that's very important. So number 1 is purpose. Number 2, I would say, get your business on a secure financial footing at the beginning. Mm-hmm. So, get a good accountant, spend on the things that are going to help you become financially secure. Make sure you've got that little pot of savings before you leave your corporate job, so that you can, and it doesn't need to be thousands upon thousands, but I would say, get yourself on a secure financial footing with your business. And that probably means getting a decent accountant or a piece of software which will help you budget. Because I think when you're nervous about money, you can't focus on anything else. Mm-hmm. So I think that would be number 2. And number 3 would be really follow your own vision, and have quite a lot of alone time when you're thinking about your business. It's very easy to get distracted by events, not just social media, but seeing people go to awards ceremonies and should I be entering an award, and everyone's doing this and I'm not doing that. I think the key is to focus on your own vision, and that might mean, you know, moving to a quieter part of town, moving out of the hustle and bustle. But I think you do need to, I found it very helpful to be in a much quieter environment so I can actually think properly and craft my vision without outside distractions.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent advice. If people want to find out more about you, about your business, where can they go to get that information?
So they can find us on Instagram, GenderBuzz Official. They can find us on Twitter, GenderBuzz. They can find us on LinkedIn. All the GenderBuzz brand is all over social media. You can also list your business on our directory at genderbuzz.com and join other female-led businesses who have some brilliant products and ideas, and you'll be joining a really sort of gung-ho community.
It's been absolutely fantastic speaking to you, and I think you've really, there's a lot that people are going to gain, receive from what you've shared with us today. So thank you so much for that, and I wish you every success in moving forward, and I look forward to seeing GenderBuzz internationally, with women all over the world accessing the database. I think it's a really remarkable concept, and I look forward to seeing it come to fruition.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you haven't already done so, please make sure that you click subscribe so that you are the first to know when a new video is shared. Please also make sure you click like if you have listened to anything in this interview that has really resonated with you, or if you just enjoyed listening to the conversation. Also, please write in the comment box. And if you haven't already done so and you would like to take part in She's the Boss, please drop me an email to hello@genusec.com. Thanks for watching.